It was nice. It was honestly nice having a debate where both candidates spoke in complete sentences. Not used to that. Kind of felt like America's back, right? USA, USA. We had two candidates speaking in full sentences. Back in June, we had no candidates speaking in full sentences. They were screaming about golf scores. Last month, we had one candidate speaking in full sentences. That was crazy, right? And that's because on this vice presidential debate, what was nice is everyone on stage was younger than the legal retirement age, right? That felt good. And so when I sat there and I listened to them, I could see a real stark contrast between the two campaigns about a lot of different stuff. Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, he specifically talked a lot about his resume and being the governor of a state and how he would apply things that he learned at those states to how he would govern other places and kind of ideas, because that's one thing about America, right? It's supposed to be 50 little labs that we can test rules and regulations on and then say, hey, this works for Pennsylvania. Maybe it'll work for South Carolina. This works for Minnesota. Maybe it'll work for California. He talked a little bit about that. He implied it, but then he also talked a lot about direct policies. And there were policies that I was really interested in, like childcare in particular. I have a 9-month-old. He was bouncing on my knee and screaming for the first half of the debate. But when they got into the childcare part, I really listened in. Because Tim Walz in particular, he really talked a lot about how we need to have like paternity and maternity leave. They call it family leave. But just to be clear, like we need to have that, and we need to make sure that like kids don't go hungry and all this different stuff. I was like, yeah, kids shouldn't be hungry. And when they turned to JD Vance, they were like, what are your thoughts? He was like, my beautiful wife, we have 3 kids, and she worked. Didn't like it. I was like, what? I'm pretty sure JD Vance implied that his idea is that women shouldn't work. And then when they got to housing, he implied, like, we're just going to kick out everybody that's paler than me, and then you can just have their house. And I was like, what are we talking about here? Like, it just got weirder and weirder because I realized a lot of people aren't used to guys like JD Vance. JD Vance will say whatever he can to make you just go move on to the next thing. And he tried that a couple times, in particular when it came to Hurricane Helene. When they talked about the devastation in Asheville and Gatlinburg and all the other areas across the South and Appalachia, where JD Vance loves to remind us, I'm from Appalachia. It's like, you're from a fucking suburb in Ohio, buddy, but whatever. Your mama stole some pills from a hospital. But when they were talking about that, right, he went into this whole thing. JD Vance just kept going, this crazy weather patterns, man. It's crazy, right? What are you going to do about it? And Tim Walz was like, we need to be building to make sure that we cut down on stuff like greenhouse gases, that we cut down on all these different things. And then he was like, carbon for man-made climate change? Nah, that ain't it. It's just crazy weather. And that's the difference right there. You have one candidate, Tim Walz, who got up there and he said, these are our ideas for how we're going to make your life better. And JD Vance stood on the other side and said, life is fine how it is. Get over it. And that's your choice.